logistical question.
All right, Charlie, I have 12:03. We've got about 14 people on so far. Maybe a couple more people will join us as we get started. But if you're ready to go, and if Nancy is ready to go, we could go ahead and get started anytime.
Well, we'll do that. I'll welcome everybody to the show. We have Nancy Cox with us today, and David's going to be talking a little bit more about her and reading her official bio, but I know her personally. I worked with her in another organization, the National Academy of Television Arts and Sciences, the Ohio Valley chapter. Your official title is president, or you're the chairman? What is that?
I'm president.
You're president.
Right.
And I served with her on the board of governors for that organization. It's wonderful. And I know Nancy from there, but I know her also as a human being. She has kids. She sings karaoke. She's just a wonderful, down-to-earth person. And so I'm glad to have her on because of that. Nancy, I know that just watching your newscast last night, we have this terrible death over at UK at that fraternity from that 18-year-old boy. And while that's a tragedy in himself, but looking at the news itself, that story connects with government and law in so many ways, from UK to state police with alcoholic beverages, that we as the government communicators group here out of Frankfurt and around the state, we're going to look to you in the next half hour maybe of how the news has, from your standpoint, say from television news, how you all connect with us and what we're doing right, what we're doing wrong, maybe how we could do better, work together better. But it seems like every time you turn around, every news, or at least most of the news stories, if it's a fire, if it's crime, you got the fire department, you have the police department. If it's COVID, there's something going on with state government you'll want to connect with. There's a problem with the highways, a wreck, snow emergency, transportation cabinet's always involved in that. And so it seems like the news and government communicators should work well together. We want to get your assessment side of a report card, if you will, of how well we are doing that and how we can continue to do that. I wanted, before we turn it over to David and Nancy, I want to remind you that it's that time of year for elections to take place here in our Kentucky Association of Government Communicators. And if you have someone on your staff or you yourself you would like to nominate or send us your name, that we'd like to include you on the slate, we'd love to hear from you. It's a great organization we've had for 40 years, and we're looking forward to keeping that going. My term as president will end at the end of this year. David himself is going to be leaving. And so we have a few openings and we have a few opportunities. And after Nancy's talk, I want to talk a little bit more about that and tell you some details. So David, with that, go ahead with Nan's bio, and I look forward to hearing what she says.
Thank you, Charlie, and welcome everyone. I'm glad you're here to join us today. We are very lucky to have Nancy Cox join us. She is a respected and an award-winning journalist. Nancy's one of the most recognized and popular anchors in the history of Lexington television. Beginning as a reporter and producer at WKYT, Ms. Cox came to WLEX in 1992 as a reporter and an anchor, and moved to the main anchor desk, playing a key role in Lex 18 becoming the #1 rated newscast. Over her 30-year career, Ms. Cox has been honored with the prestigious Edward R. Murrow Award, 7 Emmy Awards, and numerous Kentucky Associated Press Awards, including Best Anchor honors. She gives back to her profession by serving as president of the National Academy of Television Arts and Sciences, the Ohio Valley region. And among the many memorable moments in her outstanding career, Ms. Cox covered the first inauguration of President Barack Obama, an exclusive one-on-one interview with Hillary Clinton during her presidential campaign, the NTSB hearings on the crash of Comair Flight 5191, 20 Kentucky Derbies, several Final Fours and NCAA basketball championships for her lifelong favorite Kentucky Wildcats, and a one-on-one interview with the legendary UK announcer Kaywood Ledford as he bade farewell to his broadcasting career. She is a summa cum laude graduate of Western Kentucky University. Nancy was Miss Kentucky, representing her beloved home state in the 1990 Miss America pageant. She has served on the boards of both Miss Kentucky and Kentucky Junior Miss, where she was also a participant and a finalist. She is an in-demand speaker and singer for church and charity organizations. Over the decades, Nancy has made hundreds of appearances, including hosting every Central Kentucky Go Red annual fundraiser since its inception for the American Heart Association, the Salvation Army, Race for Cure, and Habitat for Humanity. She has inspired many with her determination while undergoing major back surgeries to correct scoliosis, and is often invited to share her story with civic and religious groups. Above all her achievements and awards, Nancy's greatest joy is the blessing of her two wonderful children, son Thomas and daughter Campbell, and the large 10 siblings, supportive family in her hometown of Campbellsville, Kentucky. So everybody, welcome Nancy here. Nancy, thank you so much for joining us today. We are looking forward to it.
Thank you so much for having me. I should have told you to cut that bio down. Nobody needs to hear all that. That's the one you turn into your boss, you know, to look good, and they stick it on the website. But thank you so much. I'm honored and humbled to be talking with you today, and very pleased to know more about your organization and what you do. And I so appreciate that you're open to talking to us folks in the media about what we can all do better. You can't talk about government communications, news reporting in any way right now without talking about how crazy the last going on 2 years has been. Everything about how we cover anything was turned upside down. And we were able to somehow pull off not missing a single newscast during the pandemic from day one. Honestly, if you had told me we're going to have to do everything virtually, how much news can we do? I would have been pleased to have gotten off 1 or 2 newscasts a day, and we didn't miss one. So that's mind-boggling to me. In fact, it's something that 5 years ago, I have no doubt we could not have done. Technology is just evolving at the speed of light right now. And so we were able to do everything that takes place in a studio and $1 million control, or probably 3 million now, control room, all virtually, all with the internet, all with cell phone capability to send back video and sound and live pictures. So it's pretty mind-boggling what we and all the broadcasters who've had to go through that have done over the past 2 years. In fact, we did some newscasts, several in fact, with no human in our studio. No weather person, no anchors, no camera people, no anything. And there might have only been 2 or 3 people in the control room. The rest of us were anchoring from home, sports from home, weather from home with graphics. We had people making graphics at home. We had people running the teleprompter from their home. So think about that for a minute. I'm sitting in my living room in Lexington, reading a teleprompter that's being operated by somebody else from their home in Lexington. And this is all being broadcast through our studio on Russell Cave Road. That's just pretty bizarre. And it came with its own set of challenges, absolutely. But I am so proud of our team for what we were able to accomplish. The engineers went way above and beyond. They had to get so creative. They had to work many, many hours. They had to be innovative. I think we have a few MacGyvers working at our station right now, actually. So that's just pretty crazy. I felt like many times we were making it up as we went. How are we going to do this? What news is there? Initially, I think anyway, maybe many of you thought that 2-week shutdown was going to be just that. No grocery stores, no gas stations, everything closed. So how do you do a newscast? How can we go out and cover when basically the world shuts down? But at the same time, everybody was going to be at home. So now more than ever, they needed us. We were the voice of the outside world. Clearly, the shutdown didn't quite turn out as I imagined it. In reality, it was barely a partial shutdown in many ways. All you had to do was to go to Walmart to see that happen, or Kroger. But it still created major obstacles for us in reporting the news. Our reporters and photographers showed amazing creativity. I remember early on, we wanted to interview a restaurant owner. I don't think the restaurants had been completely shut yet. So we sit outside the restaurant with that restaurant owner on a tablet, Facebook, and our videographer shot the reporter talking to the interview on the tablet, and yet made it a beautiful shot with the restaurant in the background and the lighting. And so we didn't lose our craft. We didn't lose the creativity and the desire to put out a good product, a creative product, and still do all the things we do every day to try to tell a compelling story. If your story's not told in a compelling way, who's going to watch it? And therefore, do they get the information? So it was pretty spectacular, the things that we pulled off. The big staple for news initially for the pandemic was the governor's daily news briefing, or the Andy Beshear Hour, as it became known through Central Kentucky. Why did we choose to take Governor Andy Beshear live on these news conferences? That's not generally the way we like to do anything, is to turn our airtime over to the governor of the state and say, you can have it, run with it, without a lot of commentary, without much analysis initially. But our job, in my opinion, is to serve the public in similar ways that you do. And at that time, all that mattered to us was the pandemic, and how were we going to educate our kids, feed our families, what's going to happen if we lose our jobs. It encompassed every aspect of our daily lives. And the only avenue for us to get any information on this was the medical community and the government. So think about that. At no time in my career have we relied so heavily on folks in your position. And I think by the most part, it was a wonderful relationship that I have seen it. The government communicators were very responsive and very quick to answer our questions. And again, I think we were all making it up as we go, those in government and those communicating. So I think we all had to trust each other a little more than usual through that. We chose to stop airing the governor's news conferences at some point, or I guess initially we cut down on it. We didn't, there were times we stayed with him for maybe 2 hours at a time. And that, again, 2 hours commercial free, handing over our way of making money, handing over our airwaves literally to a government agency. Unprecedented, I think. So when it got to the point that we weren't, as a society, completely waiting with bated breath on what was going to come out of the government that day, what's changed since this morning, that's when we started cutting back. That's when it was clear this wasn't a 2-week shutdown. It was clear the pandemic was not going to be over in a week or a month or a year. And so we felt it was important to start taking back that control. It didn't mean we stopped reporting on COVID. It simply meant we didn't just become a state news agency. So we limited the amount of time we took him live. We began to report more on it with reporters who took what he said and asked questions of others, asked for analysis. And then we chased where all this was going. Okay, what effect is this having on teachers, kids, parents with schools being shut down? What effect is this having on our economy, the restrictions that are in place? So we took the actions then that were taken in government and we chased the consequences of all that. And I'm very satisfied overall with how we did that. Initially, I think we had to. We had to go live. We had to rely on the government. But then we had to step back as journalists and be that questioner, be that objective voice out there for the people. I often tell folks that, 3 million people, 4 million, whatever it is right now, can't go to Frankfurt and talk to the governor, but we can, and we can bring that to you. I think also we had to take back control of those relationships with those we communicate with in the government. We couldn't just take everything that was given to us with no questioning, with no pushing back on, no, we really do need this interview today because the people need it. Those are just examples. So we had to step back up and take control of that. And that was important. But again, I think the timing was fine. I think during the initial, we're still in the pandemic, but during the shutdown, we'll put it that way, it became a little bit harder to hold government officials accountable because they could sort of, I don't want to say hide behind, but the situation was ideal for them if they didn't want to address certain issues. And then the protests began in Lexington and in Kentucky. So that added that other layer, this other issue. Aside from COVID, the racial issues and the unrest and the all the emotion that was being expressed in society, we also had to cover that. And it jumped over the pandemic on many, many newscasts and became the big story. But it came a little bit harder to hold police accountable, even to hold these protesting groups accountable because we had protocol and it was just a little harder for us to hold everyone's feet to the fire, so to speak. I will say Governor Beshear made himself available on a couple of times for one-on-one interviews. I've conducted 2 of those. They were open to saying, okay, let's talk to your more seasoned people, the people who've been around a lot longer, who they knew were going to ask the tougher questions. So I applaud them for that. And it was in those interviews, I think we began pushing back a little harder. And that's what we have to do. I don't care if there's a D or R by your name. That's our job. You're always going to put forth the great things that are happening. We have to find the other stuff for the people of Kentucky. We also had to deal with, okay, how do we divide our news time between pandemic and protests and other things that might be happening in the community that, quite frankly, got a little shortchanged probably over that time. For me, that big issue is the violence in Lexington. It's as if before the pandemic, we had a certain level of shootings and deaths in Lexington that crept up during the pandemic. But with the way the reporting happened, it almost went, we woke up from the pandemic and oh my goodness, there's so many more shooting deaths. There's so much more violence. So we've had to play a little catch up on that in covering it and making people aware. We sometimes get criticism for maybe making a big deal over one shooting that happens. Maybe nobody was hurt, but maybe that's a drive-by, probably gang related, most definitely drug related. And it's a part of that big picture because now we're looking at a huge gang and drug problem with our violence in Lexington. You can't just choose when to report on the elements of that because it all goes together so that the public, the people at home, can see the big picture of what's really happening. Therefore, can hold police, government, whoever, parents, schools, whoever is involved, accountable for those issues. Our newsroom atmosphere changed dramatically through the pandemic. I worked at home. I came back a couple times, went home a couple times, but the duration was a year and a half with going back a couple times. I work at home. I'm one of the longest tenured people in our station. And so that's a whole lot of experience and market knowledge you don't have in the building, that when there's a question come up about a story, that I or someone like me is not there to give it that perspective or connect to the market history and community values, community history. So we lost a lot there, I think. We're much more disconnected. People make decisions, I think, a little bit more independently. And while that's good to some degree, and I'm talking about producers, reporters, while you have to have independent thinking, you also have to have collaboration for the reasons I just mentioned. So we're building that back. We had a tremendous number of transitions with our staff during the pandemic. So now I've come back and nobody knows me. They've seen the anchor on TV and in our newsroom. The people don't know me, the new reporters, the new producers. And depending on anchors they worked with before, maybe anchors they worked with before just went out on the set and read the news. I don't do that, and neither does my co-anchor. So we're stepping in now in a situation where we're having to reassert our leadership and authority in the newsroom. And that's really important in a market like ours, in a city like ours, to have those longer tenured folks being the leaders in the newsroom. And so I feel like sometimes our product suffers from that. But there are a million ways I could go on and on about how my job has changed or was affected over that time. I think I've hit the big points that I wanted to make as far as how we work with government. I think in some ways we forged new trust with some folks, and maybe we were a bit off-putting to others. But I think we have reversed a trend that I saw, at least in Lexington, in that we were in Frankfurt less. We were covering Frankfurt less. It was really important on election day or in the day after, but we got away from it the other 363 or 4 days a year. So it's reconnected us, to me, in state government. I think local governments, we stayed pretty connected. So to me, that's the biggest takeaway from this. And hopefully, in the long run, our relationship with those in communications with state government will only get better. I think I would like to assure you that of the people I work with here in Lexington and multiple stations. Our intentions really are good. Most of us don't go to Frankfurt for an interview looking for a gotcha moment. And I know all of you are pretty savvy enough to find that. So it's easy for me to say, we'd love to have your trust. I know we have to earn that, but I'll just say, I hope we have open minds enough to give us that opportunity. So I'm gonna sort of end it there and look at some of the questions that have been typed in, but also give you an opportunity. Whenever I speak to folks, the questions range from what was it like to cover national politics to who does your hair? So I'm fine with any of that. I've kind of heard it all, I guess you could say. So Charlie, if you want to take back over, or David, and I'll read some of these, or you can read some of these questions over here to the side. Bear with me here, yeah.
I wanted to say something about Larry Smith. I know he is new as of within the last year with Kevin Christopher leaving, but Larry did something I don't think he saw coming. That I remember the promo, and I remember him saying, my first day on the job was to go interview the governor. But in so doing, he sort of opened the door for a lot of people who were having difficulty collecting from the unemployment system. I don't think he saw that coming either. But
no, he didn't at all. Go ahead.
He was able, I think the governor or someone in the governor's office said, if you're having trouble, if you know somebody's having difficulty collecting or getting their form established correctly, let us know, and let Larry know, and he will make a difference. He'll let them know in the governor's office. Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Sure. I was working at home on Larry's first day on the air, and we had this opportunity to have a good chunk of time one-on-one with the governor. Technology-wise, that wasn't going to work for me to do it from home. So they asked Larry, you okay with this? And Larry is a seasoned journalist. He's been in this a long time on very high levels. So he was like, sure, why not? He goes, I don't know everything, but I'll ask. And he actually did. Like I said, we began asking these very pointed questions to the governor at that point. And that was the governor's response, was like, look, Larry, if there's somebody like that, you get their name to my office. And we did that. Maybe others did as well. And were able to be that conduit for, I would say, hundreds, if not thousands of people to get their claims settled. And I think it woke a lot of people up to that problem. I don't know that the governor's office knew how bad it was on the ground, or just had so much going on, they just couldn't give attention to that. But very quickly after is when we saw the lines of people in Frankfurt, and it just spotlighted this issue. And finally, action had to be taken by the government. And it might have taken a lot longer to get to that point. We're still dealing with this. There's still people who have unsettled claims. And it may have taken even much longer for many more people had the media not gotten involved in that. And I'm really, really proud of Larry, and really, really proud that we were the first to kind of kick that off. Yeah,
anyone who would want to ask Nancy a question, please, you don't have to turn your camera back on if you don't want to. If you're eating lunch, we understand. But you can unmute your mic and please talk to her. She's as human as everybody, and we would love to hear your question or comments.
I think I'm more human than most, but when Jeff commented about how important it was for rural Kentucky and elderly folks to hear these news conferences, it's tough to tell your GM you want to take the governor an hour and a half commercial free. That's money in our pockets when our business struggled very much so during the pandemic, as well as we're still coming out of it. But that's our mission. That's why we exist, we being the media, the local media. So it was absolutely the right decision.
Nancy, I have a question from Dave Baker. He asked, what happens when all this is over? Do you think things are going to go back to the old way, or have you just gone too far? I would kind of lend on to that. What are you doing now that you didn't do before that you really like and you really think is going to continue? What has opened up that as a result of COVID? So
I think first of all, there are going to be a lot of things that go back because human nature doesn't change from the beginning of time till now. We may get sophisticated, we may get new technology, we may develop intellectually, but we still have human nature. So many things are going to go back to normal. Many things will not. I think I would just say, well, we're going to come out of this changed in how we approach a lot of stories. Like I said, I think we're not going to forget Frankfurt as much as we did there for a while. I think we're going to be there every day on the big issues. And I'm thankful for that. I think we're going to continue to be creative about how we can interview people, the Zoom, the Facebook, whatever. We're going to use that technology to be even more aggressive. It's going to be a little harder for some folks to dodge us, I guess, maybe if oh, I'm out of town. Well, guess what? We can still interview you. So there are going to be things that we're going to use to our advantage. I'm sure there are some things that are negative that will take us a while to come out of. Like I said, maybe newsroom atmosphere. I think I've seen a little bit too much trust from some of our reporters that you take what's being told to you at that news conference. Everything can be questioned. Doesn't mean it's wrong, but you need to question it. So I think it's going to be a little while to get totally back to that. It's our job to be skeptical. Again, I don't care if you're the police or the criminal. We should be skeptical on each side. So yeah, I think things will change, but things have changed, but you take the good with the bad in every major event in the world and in your own life, really. So
excellent, thank you. I got another follow-up from Dave. Dave asks, how has your news sourcing changed as the result of the pandemic? He says, I seem to see far more reporting based on government Facebook posts. So
I think that was already beginning before. You used to watch the wire, the teletype, the wire machine, the news wires come over. You used to watch the fax machine. Well, now it's Twitter and Facebook. When these are official government social media accounts, what they put out is just like a news release, and we report on that, and we will continue. That was inevitable, I think. Our sourcing very much so, like I said, being able to interview anyone, anywhere in the world now with how the technology's advanced and how much we've come to trust it and rely on it. And I think that's also made us expand our mind about who we can interview about what. Some of our reporters, we've interviewed Dr. Fauci one-on-one, we've interviewed other government officials one-on-one. And so if there's an issue in Kentucky that, oh, it's also affecting Washington State. Well, it's not just picking up a phone and trying to get to someone who might have some information. We can interview the governor of Washington State or Virginia or wherever. So it's made us broaden our thoughts and horizons on how much we can do.
I see a question here from Roberta Burns, and forgive me if we've touched on this. Says, especially in the light of our nation's racial reckoning, has your station, LEX, been able to work on diversity, inclusion, equity, and staffing? We talked about Larry Smith, representation matters, and Lexington has very few anchors of color.
Yes, she's right. And to lay the groundwork for our situation, the answer is yes. We have very much focused on this, but it began again before. Our station was purchased by Scripps in May of 2018, I think. And the transition time for complete management change and really getting into the Scripps group has taken a while. But before the pandemic, we began having conferences. We had our company, Scripps, has a diversity vice president. I forget the title, but it's diversity, inclusion kind of thing. And we had in-person seminars where I was taking off newscasts to go participate in these conferences, and others were as well. So yes, that process has begun and it's continuing. A lot of that slowed down also because of the pandemic, because this diversity inclusion officer or vice president couldn't visit the station like that the company had planned. But yes, we are most definitely trying to keep that in the front of mind, like I think so many people are, so many organizations are today. Historically, right. I think a lot of times the folks sitting on your anchor desk tend to reflect the community, sort of, because especially with anchors, generally people who are anchors put down roots and settle in a community. And so a lot of people want to go back home or different things, but Dia Davidson has made her home here, and she's been with WLEX over 20 years now. Larry is a great addition, and he plans to stay here for a long time. Now, I think his talent may dictate that, because I can see a much bigger opportunity coming along for him. He has already experience in Washington, D.C., Atlanta, and CNN. So he's got the resume there to back that up. But it's very much at the front of our mind. We have Josh Berrien, who is our weekend sports anchor, but also gets to anchor a lot on the 11 o'clock newscasts through the week. He has a desire to move on and move higher up, so I don't know how long he'll want to be here. But yes, it is definitely in our minds. The market right now for really good, talented people is tough. There's so many news outlets now, also online news outlets. Look at the boom in sports outlets. ESPN 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 practically. So we've already had to compete for those positions regardless. But we're doing it, for any positions. And certainly when you're looking to have a more diverse front line, if you will, starting five. Yeah. So you compete with a lot of people on that to get the best folks and the people we think will be a fit for Lexington.
And anyone who wants to just unmute and turn on their videos, more than welcome to do that. You can also take advantage of our chat and ask questions there. The Zoom interview, Nancy, to me is here to stay. The FaceTime interview, I'm going to bet, is here to stay. And I think that's opened up an easy street for back and forth communications to get the interview that maybe you wouldn't have been able to before, or would not have ever dreamed of doing before. But now it seems commonplace. Let me ask you this. It's easy to say that news anchors or news reporters, producers need to be able to communicate with government information officers to get the right story, to get the details maybe they couldn't otherwise. Are there hurdles out there between the two of us? That what's the easiest way for you to reach us? You think maybe we could chime in on that? What's the easiest way for us to reach a newspaper, your station, a radio station? What do you think the hurdles are out there, if any?
The best way to ever for us get what we needed, for you to get information to who you needed. It's always been that personal contact, right? Before cell phones, sometimes we just drive to Frankfurt or drive where we needed and knock on doors and hope people are in. Then when every car had cell phones, we would call. And it's still important, though, to know that person you're calling, to have that person's phone number, not just call the generic number in the book for that agency or that institution. And now even more so, texting. We're all on our phones 24/7, and that text notification comes in immediately, more so than Twitter, more so than Facebook, more so than email. Email's a really good way too, because almost everyone has it on the phone now. It may not just be as instantaneous. For me, texting's the way to go. I give my cell phone out number to anyone who wants it, because I can always block you later, you know, but if you have that number, you can text me. Believe me, we want to get it right. We don't walk in your office wanting bad information. So communicate with us. Tell us when we're wrong. Tell us when we're right. Steer us in the right direction. Get us to the right person, whatever it takes. We want to get it right, not just get it first. So I think that answers your question in a couple of different angles.
Other questions?
I have another one from Dave Baker, who's always inquisitive. He asks, how do folks still active in the news business view the ex-journalists who've migrated to government work? And we all know of several of those.
For me, I always felt that they would have a better understanding of where I'm coming from. And I always felt maybe there would be that mutual trust, because they've been where I am and they know what I'm looking for. They know I'm not out to just burn someone, hopefully, or like I said, that I want to get it right. So that's, to me, has always been a real positive. I don't know of anyone who's really viewed it that way. I mean, I was always pleased if a name popped up in state government or in health care at UK hospital or UK public relations. If it was a name I knew, maybe someone I worked with, or at least had a professional knowledge of each other, I always loved that. To me, familiarity helped in any situation like that.
Excellent. Does anybody else have questions out there? I am more than willing to keep asking questions from Dave Baker. He does have another one. What kind of metrics do your supervisors use to judge your effectiveness? Do you have goals like how many likes and shares, that kind of type thing? And does that affect your topic selection for news stories?
It does. We monitor everything, just probably like every organization does anymore. We monitor Facebook likes and shares, and to some degree the comments. We monitor certainly Twitter and Instagram and all that stuff. And now with Scripps, it's easy to do. They have all that ability in place, all that technology in place for us. So it is a consideration. It doesn't drive our newscasts, but it's discussed. And in our 9 a.m. editorial meeting every morning, that's one of the first things that's put out there is what up to that moment has been trending most and what's gotten good reaction from people. And there are plenty of times there's stuff we think will really be a hit and it falls flat, and vice versa. So it's good information. It's better than the old days when we could only base it on phone calls or then later emails, because generally only the people who are upset with you call or email. So that wasn't always the best. But now if somebody shares something, you figure they did it because it was interesting or they liked it or something. So it is a better yardstick to apply, I think.
Excellent, thank you. Frank Shelton asks, he says, going back to having that connection with Nancy or others in the newsroom, what does that look like for event news advisories? How soon is still soon enough to find out about events? And are you accepting more submitted footage, B-roll for events that you can't send a crew to cover?
We do. Everybody is a videographer these days with that camera in hand. We have guidelines. We either verify that video we're getting submitted is the real deal and not taken from YouTube. We also require permission from a person who took a certain photo before we will put it on the air. We won't go to Facebook and lift a photo and put it on. Even if we know that's who the person is, even if we've seen it on all the other media outlets, we get our own independent permission from that person. Same way with video that might be submitted. I think it has helped sports a lot in that we may no longer travel to Moorhead to shoot a ball game, but if they shoot it and now it's so easy to transfer that video, they send it to us, yeah, we may use it. So that's been really helpful in a lot of situations, such as we wanted video from inside a COVID unit. Well, that took a long time to get any traction on, but it finally came when the hospital itself said, well, yeah, we have shot some of this. We'll share some of it with you. Well, that's better all the way around because of safety reasons and then privacy reasons, of course. So in that instance, yeah, that was best case scenario. We have to constantly innovate in these ways, not just because of competition, but well, I guess a lot of it is competition, just staying ahead and getting the best stuff. Oh, and stretching our resources further and further, because everybody's cutting back right now and we have staff members leave and may not replace them for 6 months. So everybody's having to do more with less. So that helps.
Excellent. Kind of along those same lines, can you talk something about the pressure keeping up with internet sources and verifying and verification?
It's tough, most definitely. But we still have the same standards in place. If we heard an accident over police scanners, we don't report that. You go and you see, because that's based on a 911 call, right? You go and you verify it with your eyes and ears. We still do that. We still pick up the phone and go right to the source, go to one of you or to the hospital PR person or the sports information officer, whoever, we go direct to that source. We still are an NBC affiliate, so their sources are our sources. Not many people scoop each other anymore here locally because so much is announced via Twitter or Facebook or some other way. And as soon as a news organization gets the information, they tweet it. So then we can go follow it up and track down the same sources. So it's become harder just because there are more ways to do it, but we still have the same standards in place on verifying.
Excellent. Kevin Kelly asks, what are the deadlines for WLEX newscasts, and are those applicable for most stations? And also, are deadlines different for web stories versus broadcast stories?
It is all so fluid. We have to plan. So if you as a reporter are told that morning you are a lead story at 5 o'clock, yeah, you got to have that story ready to go about 5 o'clock. So those kinds of deadlines. But it's constantly fluid. If you miss that deadline, well, get that story in as soon as you can. We're putting it on the air. The 24/7 news cycle that evolved 20, 30 years ago is carried into that. There are no true deadlines as we've looked at them in the past, as far as, okay, the paper goes to print at this certain time, or with a TV station, you got to hit this deadline. So we physically have time to get that tape from the newsroom back to the tape player in the control room where it's going to play out of. We don't have that. That's electronically transferred. So much of that has changed with just those physical deadlines. But we, with Twitter and Facebook and web all together, as soon as something gets in, gets verified, it gets on. Even if we only know 2 sentences about it right now, if it's validated, you put it on, then you constantly add to that. So it's not like you're needing a whole complete web article to be written and turned in. If you don't have a picture related to that story yet, that's okay. Get the story on there. We'll get the picture when it comes in. So it's just so much more fluid. If at 5:10 a major story breaks and we verify it, we don't wait till the 5:30 show to begin to put it on. We put it on when it's ready. If we have a major fire downtown and our reporter gets on scene and has time to actually step in front of the camera and turn on the power switch, and they can tell us in our ears we have it, we take it. That's the deadline. So, hope that answers that question.
Absolutely. Thank you. Dave says, thank you. He says, I sense I get a great sense of honesty here. It's greatly appreciated. Do we have any other questions or comments in the audience? Charlie, do you have any follow-up questions? We are at 12:55, so we're getting close.
I don't, but certainly thank Nancy for coming by today and spending most of an hour. She texted me a while ago and said, how long should I go? And I said, well, 20 minutes, maybe a half hour. And, and this has grown into something really nice and insightful. So Nancy, thank you. It's not often we get to sit down and talk to someone many of us have idolized and only see on our TV sets and at 6 and 11, but it's nice to be able to chit chat and get some insights from you.
Well, you embarrassed me with that comment, because I just say my work happens to take place in front of a lot of people. There's I'm extremely thankful for what I've been able to do with my career. It's the thing I always wanted to do and wasn't sure I'd ever really get to. You all ask amazing questions that make me think, and that's important. And Charlie asks the best, most thorough questions in the world. So,
well,
it's been a pleasure. I'm honored to be here with you. I
had said something earlier. If we could get an assessment, am I muted? If I could get an assessment of how we have done, a report card, if you will. So what would our grade be? A B, a C, maybe an A? Well,
we're never satisfied, right? We always want more. You give us the scoop, we want another scoop. So in general, I think by far the most difficult avenue we go through to get information is police or a hospital. And I think it's much more difficult here. We see many other communities around the country who get 911 audio like that, who get dash cam video like that. And Kentucky has a lot of strict laws on that kind of thing, but then a lot of strict policies that could change if anyone had the desire to do so. But I think generally you guys, I never give A's in anything when I was teaching. So we'll go a B. How about that?
All right, we're a B and working toward more.
That's right.
And thanks a million. I call people, Nan, my godmother when I was an infant was Nancy Joe, and I grew up calling people were Nancy and Nan, and it just comes out and it's
That's
an
fine.
accident.
And I'm Nancy Jane, so that's
Yeah.
close, you know, Nancy Jane.
Okay. So, David, I wanted to talk a minute about the elections and other things coming up towards the end of the year. Boring things probably to you, Nancy, and you're welcome to leave or hang around. But is there anything you would like to say, David, about how people who couldn't catch this can find it recorded later?
I will send out an email. It will probably be mid to late next week, but I'll get the video all trimmed up and we'll post it to our website. I'll send up a follow-up email to all of our members, so I'll let them know. But I would say sometime next week, and it'll be posted to our website.
We have had an interesting year COVID-wise. I'm so thrilled. We had the awards. Boy, we wanted to have them in person, but we couldn't. But COVID got in the way, but at least we had them online. And I thank everyone who is still with us for going out there and knocking it out of the park and winning awards. We do have our elections coming up. And if anybody would like to step up and show your stuff, this is a great way to show people at work, your supervisors, your commissioners, your CEOs, a little bit more of what you're made of if you're looking to climb the ladder. I remember way back, this was early 90s, when I came onto the KAGC, I had David's job, Vice President of Programs, and it was quite the eye-opener, and it worked out well. So if you would like to put your name on the docket, put your name on the slate, please contact me at charliebaglin@gmail.com. We have the Office of President, the VP of Programs, Administrative Vice President, and 2 Director at Large positions. So there's some opportunities to come aboard and hopefully get, when as soon as the pandemic allows, the fall conferences going and elbow to elbow once again and back to a great program like we have known in the past. So please let us know. We also hope to be having the holiday reception. We have a call into the Berry Hill Mansion now. I haven't heard back from them to see if they're scheduling such things. And if we can, we certainly will. So with that said, I'm glad you joined us today. Again, thanks, Nancy Cox, and have a great rest of the day. We'll be in touch.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for joining us.